When I saw their faces light up on the projector screen, his hand resting on her thigh, her smile soft and familiar, I realized I didn't need to say a single word. The truth was speaking for me. People gasped. My mother-in-law dropped her fork. My husband's sister whispered something under her breath that sounded like a prayer. And he, my husband Daniel, sat frozen, like a man who had just watched his own life catch fire in front of him. I stood there, calm, holding my glass of water with both hands to steady the tremor. I had practiced that face in the mirror, the look of quiet composure. Not vengeful, not smug. Just done. Play it again, someone murmured. But I didn't. I just turned and walked away. And in that moment, for the first time in months, I could finally breathe. But to understand why I did what I did, why I exposed him that way, you have to know how it all began. Because I wasn't always like this. I used to believe forgiveness was sacred. Until forgiveness became the lie that protected his sin. Daniel and I had been married for 12 years. 12 ordinary, imperfect, beautifully exhausting years. We met at a friend's wedding, of all places. He was the photographer, easy smile, steady hands, the kind of man who noticed the smallest details, like when a woman brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. He made me laugh that night. By the next morning he'd texted, "You looked like someone I'd want to come home to." And for years I believed he meant it. Our life was simple. He ran a small photography studio downtown. I worked as a school counselor. We didn't have children, though we tried once, twice, then quietly stopped trying after the second miscarriage. Our home became our child instead. I filled it with soft colors and warmth. He filled it with laughter and playlists. Sunday mornings smelled like coffee, and the sound of his humming through the kitchen walls. There was love, or at least the comfort of something that looked like love. We had our fights, of course, about bills, about my long hours at school, about his late nights editing photos. But nothing that felt fatal. Not until I started noticing the silences. The kind of silences that come when someone starts living a secret life. It began with small things, the phone face down on the table, the sudden showers before dinner, the way he started wearing cologne again, the same one he used when we first met. One night, while I was folding laundry, his phone buzzed on the couch. I wasn't the kind of wife who snooped. I prided myself on trust. But that night, something in the tone of that vibration, it wasn't a normal text. It was sharp. Urgent. When I looked over, I saw a name flash across the screen. Lila Redheart. It wasn't a name I recognized. He came into the room just then, and I remember my throat tightening as I handed him the phone. "You've got a message," I said, watching his face. He smiled too quickly. "Oh, it's just a client," he said. "Wedding consultation." And I nodded, pretending to believe him, because believing was easier than breaking. But later that night, while he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the way his hand now rested on the far side of the bed, not on me. The weeks that followed were strange. He started taking more late shoots. His laughter sounded forced. When I kissed him goodbye in the morning, he'd pull back too soon, like my lips were a reminder of something heavy. Once when he came home late, his shirt smelled faintly floral, something delicate like jasmine. Not my perfume. Not my scent. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed that night, clutching that shirt to my face, and whispering to no one, "Tell me it's not true." But the universe stayed silent. Then one afternoon, I stopped by his studio unannounced. I had baked muffins for his staff, something I did occasionally just to surprise him. His assistant looked startled when I walked in. "Oh, he's out," she said, eyes darting toward the back room. But I heard something. A soft laugh, a woman's voice, and then his. My name almost slipped from my mouth, but something inside me said wait. I turned and left before they saw me. That night, when he came home, I didn't ask. I made dinner, smiled, and listened to him talk about how busy his day had been. And that's when I decided, if he could lie so easily, I could learn to listen quietly. I started keeping notes, not out of spite, but out of a strange, desperate need to understand. Dates, times, places. Receipts from a cafe he never mentioned. Messages I caught glimpses of when he left his phone unlocked. And then one day, while transferring files from our shared computer, I found a folder buried inside another. titled Client A12. Inside were photos, not just of weddings or portraits, but of her, Lila. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s. Hair like honey, eyes that seemed to laugh at the camera. And in one picture I saw him, his arm around her waist, both smiling, in that intimate, unguarded way people do when they believe no one else is watching. I remember feeling my knees go weak, the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream, but instead, I clicked save as and copied everything onto a flash drive. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was insurance. For the moment I'd need the truth to speak louder than my pain. That night, I watched him sleep. His face looked peaceful, innocent even. And I thought about how love can make you blind. And betrayal, sharp enough to restore your sight. I knew then. I wasn't going to confront him right away. No, I would let him keep believing I was the same trusting wife. Because forgiveness, when performed well, is the perfect disguise. The morning after I found those photos, I woke up before him. The light was soft, spilling through the blinds, tracing lines across his bare back. For a moment, I studied him the way a stranger might, searching for signs of the man I once knew. He stirred and smiled sleepily, pulling me close. "You're up early," he murmured. "I couldn't sleep," I said. He kissed my forehead, like he always did, and went back to dreaming. And I lay there thinking, how easily people hold you while hiding everything from you. For weeks after that, I played my part. I laughed when I was supposed to. I packed his lunch, asked about his day, made love to him when he reached for me. I even left sweet notes in his bag, each one signed, "Your forgiving wife." He thought I was softening, that my old warmth was returning. But inside, I was gathering strength. I'd learned that truth doesn't always need to be chased. It just needs to be given space to reveal itself. And soon it did. It was a Sunday evening in late May. He was supposed to be shooting an engagement party 2 towns over. I'd gone out for groceries when my phone buzzed with a message from my friend Clara. One of those friends who never sugarcoats. "Didn't you say Daniel's working tonight?" "Yeah, why?" I replied. "Because I just saw him at the Grove Hotel. With someone. Not a client." My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped my phone. Clara sent a photo, a blurry image taken from across the lobby. But even through the poor lighting, I could see them. Daniel and Lila, sitting close at the bar. Her hand resting on his leg. His head tilted toward hers. Something inside me went completely quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't call him. I just drove home and waited. When he finally walked through the door past midnight, I was sitting on the couch with the lamp on. He froze for a second, then smiled that tired, guilty smile. "Hey, you're still up?" "Yeah," I said softly. "How was the shoot?" "It was fine. Long day," he said, stretching. "The couple was a nightmare, but..." "Don't lie to me, Daniel." He blinked. "What?" I stood up slowly, my hands trembling despite my calm voice. "You weren't at a shoot. You were at the Grove. With her." He stared at me, stunned. Then his jaw tightened. "Who told you that?" "Does it matter?" I asked. "You've been lying to me for months. You think I don't know about the photos? The messages? The perfume that's not mine?" His silence was the loudest confession I'd ever heard. Finally, he said, "It's not what you think." I laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Please don't insult me. I've seen you with her." "She means nothing," he said quickly. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Then how far did it go?" I whispered. He looked away. That was my answer. Did I remember the exact sound of that moment? The refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, my breath shaking. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. 6 months. Maybe a little more. 6 months. Half a year of my life spent cooking dinners for a man who was already full from someone else's table. "Do you love her?" He hesitated again, and that hesitation was the knife. "Daniel," I said, my voice cracking. "Do you love her?" His eyes glistened. "I don't know." And there it was. The truth. I should have screamed. I should have thrown the vase or the phone, or my wedding ring. But I didn't. I just walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and said, "You should go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow." He looked confused, maybe even relieved that I wasn't making a scene. But I wasn't calm because I'd forgiven him. I was calm because I finally understood who he was, and who I was not going to be anymore. That night, while he slept, I opened his phone one last time. I read their messages, soft, secret things written in the language of betrayal. You make me feel seen. She doesn't appreciate you like I do. Can't wait to see you again, my love. My love. He had called me love for 12 years. Now he was giving it away like spare change. I forwarded the texts, screenshots, and photos to myself. I didn't know what I would do with them yet. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let him rewrite this story later. Because men like Daniel always try to. The next morning, he came to me with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. I made a mistake. I'll end it. I promise. He knelt beside the bed, holding my hand like a penitent child. And for a moment, I almost believed him. I almost wanted to believe him. Because forgiveness felt safer than the chaos that waited beyond it. I asked him, does she know it's over? I'll tell her today, he said. And I nodded. Then do it. He kept his promise, or at least, that's what he told me. He showed me the text he sent her. We can't do this anymore. She didn't reply. Or maybe she did later, on another phone I didn't know about. We went to counseling. We took walks again. We held hands at the grocery store like two actors in a play about redemption. To everyone else, we looked like a couple healing. But inside, I was building my quiet reckoning. I wasn't planning revenge out of hatred. I was planning truth out of justice. Then came our anniversary dinner. His family invited us to celebrate at his parents' home. His mother adored me, believed I was the best thing that ever happened to her son. And that's when the idea took root. Not revenge. Not exposure for attention. But a reckoning witnessed by those who once thought he could do no wrong. Because when someone betrays you privately, sometimes the only way to reclaim your power is to let the truth breathe publicly. And I knew exactly how to do it. That night, after everyone went to bed, I opened my laptop and began to create a small slideshow, a beautiful, tasteful one. It began with our wedding photo, then the early years, the smiles, the trips. Then, quietly, seamlessly, it shifted into the screenshots, the texts, the images from that hidden folder. It wasn't crude or cruel. It was just truth. The truth he'd buried. And as I watched the images fade one into the next, I whispered to myself, you asked for forgiveness, Daniel. Now you'll learn what honesty feels like. The days leading up to that family dinner felt like the quiet before a storm. Still heavy, almost sacred. Daniel was in good spirits. He hummed again in the mornings, made jokes about how we were finally back on track. He even bought me a new dress, soft lavender silk, to celebrate our new beginning. I smiled, thanked him, and hung it in the closet beside my black one. The black one I had already chosen for that night. His mother had gone all out for the dinner. It was their anniversary too, 35 years of marriage. The family was large, noisy, filled with cousins, uncles, nieces running barefoot through the house. Laughter echoed from the backyard where the men grilled. And the smell of roasted garlic and butter drifted through the hallways. That IT should have been a happy night. And maybe in another life it would have been. I spent the morning baking my lemon tart, his father's favorite. I worked in silence, my hands steady, my thoughts sharper than ever. Each whisk, each slice, each slow movement was a kind of meditation. On the counter beside me sat a small silver USB drive. The slideshow was ready. All I had to do was plug it into the family projector. I rehearsed nothing. I wasn't going to give a speech. I wasn't going to shout. Truth, I decided, should never need to raise its voice. Around 7 p.m., we arrived. Daniel's hand rested lightly on my back as we entered the house, guiding me through the crowd. The gesture made my skin crawl. Everyone's here, his sister Lily said, hugging me. You look beautiful, Hannah. That color suits you. Thank you, I said, smiling. Daniel's mother, Grace, kissed my cheek. We're so happy you both came. It means a lot, after everything. Her words lingered, kind and hopeful, unaware of what the night held. After dinner, someone suggested a toast. Then someone else, Daniel's cousin I think, said, let's watch something. Daniel, didn't you bring those old photos from your anniversary trip? He laughed, nodding. Yes, I did. There on the flash drive in my jacket. He stood to fetch it, and that's when I reached for my purse. No need, I said sweetly. I brought something even better. He froze slightly, the way a man does when instinct whispers danger. But it was too late. I walked to the projector, plugged in my USB, and smiled at Grace. I made a little surprise for everyone, I said. A celebration of love, memories, and truth. The lights dimmed. The first slides drew smiles and soft laughter. Our wedding day, honeymoon photos, trips to the beach. Grace teared up at one of them. Oh, look how happy you were, she whispered. Then the screen flickered. The next photo appeared. Daniel and Lila, arms around each other in his studio. Her face pressed against his chest. The room went dead silent. Someone coughed. Someone else gasped. I stood perfectly still. Then came the screenshots, text after text. You make me feel alive again. She doesn't understand you like I do. When are you telling her? The words glowed across the living room wall like confession etched in fire. Grace's fork slipped from her hand. Lily covered her mouth. Daniel lunged for the laptop. Hannah, turn it off. What the hell are you doing? I stepped between him and the screen, my voice calm but sharp. No, Daniel. You want it to be seen. Let them see you. He grabbed my wrist, his face pale. Enough. I met his eyes. Enough was 6 months ago. The final slide appeared. One of him kissing Lila behind his studio door. The photo had been time-stamped. Grace let out a small sob. Daniel, please tell me this isn't true. But he couldn't speak. His mouth opened then closed again. And just like that, the room divided. Half in disbelief, half in judgment. I turned to the family and said quietly, I know this isn't easy to watch. I wish I didn't have to show it. But for months, I was made to feel crazy. Lied to. Gaslit. I forgave him when he asked. And he repaid that forgiveness with more lies. I paused, letting the silence settle like dust. So tonight I stopped pretending. I wanted the truth to stop hiding in our home. Daniel's father stood, face flushed with anger, not at me but at his son. How could you do this to her? He demanded. To this family? Grace sat with her hands trembling in her lap, staring at me as if she didn't know which of us to comfort. Daniel whispered, You humiliated me. I turned to him, eyes steady. No, Daniel. You humiliated yourself. I just turned on the lights. The rest of the night blurred into fragments. Grace crying softly, Lily escorting the children out of the room, Daniel storming outside to smoke in the cold air. I stood alone by the window, watching him pace the yard. His shoulders hunched, his face hidden in his hands. There was no satisfaction, only relief. A strange, quiet peace that comes when truth finally leaves your body. When I walked outside to leave, he turned to me. How could you do this to me? He said hoarsely. I met his eyes. The same way you did it to me. Without thinking of what it would cost. He laughed bitterly. You ruined me, Hannah. No, I said. I freed myself. Then I got in the car and drove away. That night, I didn't sleep. The images replayed in my mind. The shocked faces, the silence, his expression when he realized his secrets had run out of places to hide. But beneath it all was something unexpected, guilt. Not for exposing him, but for how easily I'd worn forgiveness as a mask. Because in pretending to forgive him, I'd also become a liar. And that was something I would have to face in the days to come. In the morning, my phone rang. Grace. Her voice was soft, fragile. Sweetheart, she said. I wish it hadn't happened that way. But I understand. You didn't deserve any of this. I thanked her. Then she whispered. He's gone to stay with his brother. I don't know what's next for him. But I hope you find peace. I will, I said. In time. I hung up, sat on the edge of my bed, and let the silence fill the room. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. In the days that followed, my phone didn't stop ringing. Family, friends, even distant acquaintances, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly wanted to check in. The video from that night had somehow found its way online. Someone, probably one of the younger cousins, had recorded part of the slideshow with their phone. Within 24 hours, Daniel's secret wasn't just family gossip. It was public humiliation. I didn't post it. I never would. But once truth leaves a room, it doesn't ask permission to travel. At first, I avoided social media. I deleted my apps, silenced my notifications. Still, the world had a way of finding me. A co-worker at school pulled me aside one morning. "Hey, I saw something online. Are you okay?" I smiled faintly. "I've fine. It's just a hard time." She nodded. "You're brave." Brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt exposed, like someone had ripped open the most private part of my heart and left it out for strangers to examine. Daniel tried calling me the first few days. I didn't answer. Then, on the fourth day, he came to the house. I saw him through the window, unkempt, tired, holding a small overnight bag. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Hannah, please," he said. "Can we talk?" I folded my arms. "About what?" He sighed. "You made your point. You've destroyed me. I lost 2 contracts because of that video. Clients don't want to work with someone who can't keep his life together." My chest tightened. "I didn't post it, Daniel." "Does it matter?" he snapped. "You're the one who started it." "I didn't start this," I said quietly. "You did, when you chose her over our marriage." He looked down, his voice cracking. "I know I messed up. I've lost everything. Please, Hannah. I'll do anything. Just tell me how to fix this." I studied him. The same man who once made me coffee every morning, who kissed my forehead before work, who whispered promises that meant nothing now. "You can't fix this," I said. "You can only learn from it." Then I closed the door. Slowly. Gently. But completely. Word spread quickly through the family. Grace stopped defending him, which, for Daniel, was the real punishment. When she called me again a week later, her voice trembled with pain and disappointment. "I raised him to be better than this," she said. "He's been staying with his brother, but he's lost. Won't eat, won't speak. He's not the same." I swallowed hard. "He shouldn't be." There was a pause, then she added softly, "I hope you find peace, dear. You've shown more restraint than I ever could." But restraint wasn't what I felt. I felt hollow. Because vengeance, even when justified, doesn't restore what was broken. It only stops the bleeding. A month later, I ran into Lila. It happened at the grocery store, of all places. I was reaching for a carton of milk when I saw her at the end of the aisle. Hair tied up, face pale, eyes darting like a cornered animal. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she turned, trying to leave, but I called out, "Lila." She froze, shoulders tense. When she turned back, her voice was barely a whisper. "Hannah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this." "Don't," I said softly. "Don't make it smaller than it was." Tears welled in her eyes. "He told me you didn't love him anymore. That you were cold, distant. That your marriage was over." I nodded. "That's what they always say, isn't it?" She looked down, ashamed. "He said he'd leave you. I never wanted to be a secret." I took a deep breath. "Then maybe next time, don't fall in love with someone else's husband." Her lip quivered. "You hate me." "I don't," I said. "I pity you. Because you believed him." And with that, I walked away. 2 months passed. The noise died down. The gossip faded, as it always does. But inside me, something had shifted permanently. At work, I threw myself into helping my students, listening, guiding, absorbing their pain to keep from feeling my own. At home, I cleaned out the house. Slowly, carefully, like removing a ghost from every corner. I boxed up his clothes, his camera gear, his books. I left only one photo on the mantle. Our wedding picture. Not because I missed him, but because I needed to remember who I used to be before lies turned me into someone else. Then one evening there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there again. This time without the bag, without the pleading eyes. Just quiet. "I came to say thank you," he said. I frowned. "For what?" "For stopping me," he said. "I hated you for exposing me. But I see now. I needed to be broken to understand what I destroyed." I didn't know what to say. His face was gaunt, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man stripped of pride. "I'm leaving town," he continued. "Going to stay with a friend up north. I want to start over. Be someone better." I nodded slowly. I hope you do. He hesitated. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked at him for a long moment. The man I once loved, the man I'd mourned, the man I'd exposed. I already did, I said. That's why I could finally let go. He blinked, surprised. Then, for the first time in a long while, he smiled, not out of charm but gratitude. Goodbye, Hannah, he whispered. Goodbye, Daniel. And just like that, he was gone. After he left, I sat on the porch, listening to the quiet hum of crickets, the faint rustle of leaves. The air smelled like rain. For months, I'd lived in the shadow of his betrayal, consumed by the need to make him feel what I felt. But now, for the first time, I realized that revenge had never been the destination. Truth was. And truth, once spoken, has its own kind of mercy. Still, not everyone saw it that way. Some family members whispered that I went too far. Others called me brave again, as if bravery was something you earned by surviving humiliation. But I didn't correct them. People see what they want to see. What mattered was what I saw when I looked in the mirror. A woman who finally stopped apologizing for wanting honesty. That night, I deleted the slideshow file. Every photo, every message, every trace of the past. It wasn't about erasing him. It was about releasing myself. I stood by the window as the computer screen went black, my reflection faint and unfamiliar. Then quietly, I said to myself, you did what you had to do. And now it's time to live again. 6 months later, spring came early. The air felt lighter, like the world had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I moved into a smaller house on the edge of town. A quiet street lined with sycamores, where the evenings smelled like jasmine and freshly cut grass. The old house was sold. The one Daniel and I had shared. I didn't even go back for the final walkthrough. Some places aren't meant to be revisited. My new home was smaller, but it felt more mine than anything ever had. The first night there, I slept on the floor, surrounded by boxes. The sound of rain tapping gently against the windows. And for the first time in years, I slept without dreams. Healing wasn't cinematic. It didn't come with music or revelation. It came quietly, through routines, through mornings I didn't dread, through small acts of reclaiming my own life. I started jogging again. I went back to painting on weekends. I even joined a local community group that hosted book readings and art exhibits. One evening, during a poetry night, a man named Michael introduced himself. He was quiet, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. We talked about literature, about the weight of silence in relationships, and about the strange comfort of solitude. He didn't flirt. He didn't pry. He just listened. And I realized then how rare that was, someone who simply listens. Still, I wasn't ready for anything more. When he asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, I smiled and said, maybe another day. He nodded. No pressure. Just understanding. And that alone meant something. Sometimes at night, I'd catch myself thinking about Daniel, not the man who betrayed me, but the boy I once fell in love with. I'd wonder if he was okay, if he ever truly found redemption. But I didn't search. I didn't check his social media or ask anyone. Because the truth is, some stories don't need an epilogue. They just need to end. One Sunday, I went to visit Grace. She'd been ill, and despite everything that had happened, she'd asked to see me. When I arrived, she was sitting by the window, wrapped in a shawl, looking smaller than I remembered. Her eyes softened when she saw me. Oh, Hannah, she said, taking my hand. You came. Of course I did, I said gently. We sat in silence for a while, the afternoon sun painting soft lines across the room. Finally, she spoke. Daniel writes sometimes. He says he's working with a charity up north, helping families rebuild after the floods. I smiled faintly. That sounds like him. Grace nodded slowly. He says he's clean now. No drinking. No lies. Her eyes glistened. He says he hopes you're happy. I looked down at our intertwined hands. I am, I whispered. Or, I'm learning to be. Grace squeezed my fingers. That's enough. And in that moment, I realized forgiveness wasn't about freeing him. It was about freeing me. When I left her house that evening, I felt something shift. Not the sharp relief of revenge, not the dull ache of sorrow. Something quieter, softer. Peace. The kind that doesn't demand, or shout, or seek validation. The kind that simply is. Months later, I hosted a small art showcase with my students. They'd spent weeks painting pieces inspired by truth, each interpreting it differently, some as color, others as chaos. One painting in particular caught my eye. A student named Ava had painted a cracked mirror reflecting a woman's face. The cracks formed a mosaic. Not broken but reframed. When I asked her what it meant, she said, "It's about how sometimes we have to break to see ourselves clearly." I smiled, my throat tight. "That's beautiful, Ava." She grinned. "It's not sad though." "She's still smiling." I nodded. "Yes, she is." That night, I hung a small print of Ava's painting in my living room. It reminded me of my own journey, of how destruction can become reconstruction, how endings can quietly turn into beginnings. I no longer hated Daniel. I no longer pitied Lila. I didn't need to feel anything about them anymore. That's how I knew I was free. One evening, I went for a walk through the park. The air was cool, the sky blushing pink with sunset. A group of children played nearby, their laughter echoing like music. As I passed the fountain, I saw Michael again. He waved, smiling. "You owe me that coffee, remember?" I laughed softly. "Igesido." We sat on a bench, talking until the sky turned dark. About art. About mistakes. About how life doesn't give you closure. You have to make it yourself. When we finally said goodbye, he asked, "Do you think pain ever really goes away?" I thought for a moment, then said, "No. But it stops controlling the story." Later that night, I stood by my window, the same one I had once watched Daniel drive away from. Now, instead of loss, I saw possibility. The moonlight fell softly across my hands as I whispered the same words I had the night I deleted that slideshow. "You did what you had to do. And now it's time to live again." Only this time, I meant it.